Hi, I'm Romi.
And I'm Nicole. Welcome to the Her Pursuit Pod, where we share our journey of building our business, The Daily Drip, a dynamic media platform that provides content and community for more than 4,000 South Florida female CEOs, founders, business owners, executives, and professionals.
Whether it's through our newsletter, events, or this podcast, our hope is to inspire your next big move and arm you with the tools you need to crush it. So tune in on your drive to work, wind down with us after a long day as we share our journey and the journeys of other remarkable business leaders on Her Pursuit.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Her Pursuit. My name's Nicole. I'm co-founder of The Daily Drip, and I'm joined here with my co-founder, Romi Wallach. And today we have a very special guest and an episode dedicated to all of the new solopreneurs, the aspiring solopreneurs, all of you consultants, advisors, subject matter experts who have been thinking about taking the leap, or maybe you just took the leap. We're here to talk all things financing for your business, planning for your business, everything money matters. What do you need to do to prep to take the leap? What do you need to do in that first year or first few years? And we have the most perfect person here on the episode to walk us through it all. We have Mr. Chad Tourin.
Well, thank you, Nicole.
Thanks for being here, Chad.
Absolutely. I think you kind of set the bar a little high. So,
well, I feel like before we dive into all the good stuff, I feel like it's important for the audience and all of our members and our community to know the special relationship that the three of us all have. I'm going to let Romi kind of do story time for this.
She goes the furthest back.
I go the furthest back, and I think what's awesome is this really is full circle, I think, for us. And so when I decided it was time to start my career and I started in financial services, Chad was literally one of the first people I met in the space. And automatically we hit it off, and we definitely aligned in terms of how we wanted to serve people. And we were in a practice that didn't really align with that. And so I got the opportunity to move with him and really learn in a way that I had never seen anyone really look at people's businesses and their personal and really understand them and how it all worked together. What always impressed me was watching people listen to you, kind of how you paid attention to them, how you talked to them, how you really understood them, and the relief they would feel at the end. Because I had witnessed people talking to advisors and walking away feeling so embarrassed or feeling whatever. And you would walk people through in this way that was so patient, so informative, and everything I learned.
I can speak from experience.
You feel inspired.
Yeah, because I'll never forget my first meeting with Chad, and I said to him, I literally feel like I'm getting naked in front of you. And he was like, it's going to be...
That's exactly what
he's like, it's going to be fine. And then when I kind of put all the cards on the table and said, what's step one? What do I do? This is where I am, and this is where I want to go. By the time I finished that 30-minute conversation, I had so much hope and excitement for the future. All of a sudden, it was all possible. And I think it's because what makes you great is how specialized you are for the business owner. And so talk to us about that.
I think it's important too to note the fact that you have expertise both with CPA background, an attorney background, a CFP background. You were able to bring so many elements together that most advisors are not in a position to do.
Or I'm just a glutton for punishment with school. I don't, one or the other. No, but well, thank you, for one, for coming with me on that journey. Romi took a blind leap of faith, really, and was like, hey, kind of hit off with Chad. He says we should change where we are. And
best sleep ever.
Yeah, I totally agree. Coming back to your question in terms of how I'm able to work with business owners so well, especially from startup, whether it's the gig community or the solopreneur that's getting out and wants to leave the big firm, is because in a way I've lived that world, right? Anyone that starts a business really is starting on an island by themselves. You don't start with tremendous resources or kind of know where to go. And the reason why I think, aside from the fact that I've lived that world myself, when I started my practice almost 13 years ago now, it was the fact that I do have the diverse background, right? Because the one thing that anyone needs to realize is that every single thing is interconnected. Whatever you do on your, in your financial world is connected to your tax world, is connected to your legal world. But also, most importantly, for the business owners, realizing the solopreneur is, okay, my business is going to become my biggest asset, and recognize that biggest asset is actually also part of your personal planning, because it's nothing more than another line item on the asset side of your personal finances, right? You have your house, your car, maybe some investments, but another part of those assets is your business, right? And what's that value of the business? So a lot of the business planning that we work on is really understanding, how we kind of put some clothes back on you. Was really kind of first understanding where you are, right? And that's the starting point really for everything. Is kind of a lot of people use the junk drawer analogy. That junk drawer, you just keep shoving stuff in there when people come over because you don't want a mess in your house, right? Well, financial stuff, for the most part, unless someone is connecting all of these things together, is really nothing more than a junk drawer of different strategies or approaches that you've accumulated over your years, right? Maybe someone, when you were, growing up, they started an account for you, and then it was, oh, now I'm working on my own, let me get my own insurance. And then all of a sudden you have a different person doing that for you, and then a different person doing your taxes, and no one's ever communicating. Right. And so it becomes
all happening in a silo. It's
all
happening separately, and they're all telling you information that you don't know what to do with it. It's like, okay, thanks, here's my taxes, or okay, thanks, here's my estate planning, or things like that. And it's all happening separately, but none of them really know the whole comprehensive picture. And I think that was my biggest wide open aha moment with you, was understanding how all of these different elements affect one another. So we have to have more comprehensive conversations about where are we going? What are the goals?
And also, where did you learn your money habits? There's so much today in behavioral finance and the psychology of money and how people think about money. And most of that stuff is learned habits, right? And so unpacking that and understanding where you came from is also really important, and also understanding what you want to do. Right? There's plenty of super wealthy people that don't want to leave anything to their kids, and they want to just give it all to charity, right? If that's not part of the discussion, you can be going down the wrong, but you can be getting the best rate of return in the world, and it won't matter because it's not going to be going towards what you want.
I think what I always loved about working with you and watching how you worked with your clients was how you positioned yourself as the quarterback, and how, as an advisor, you were like, if you're working with someone in this area, like, that's awesome. We just all need to communicate. And you would tie all the pieces together and then take it a step further. And you would speak to your client's CPA to make sure everything was in alignment. And you would speak to the attorney. And so having someone that had their eyes on everything, that understood all the elements, and bringing it all together is even like a step beyond just saying, like, having the conversation. You go that extra distance for your clients. And I think it's really important.
But I really think that's what makes you a sniper. Like, you don't just have
Sniper?
Yeah, no, I'm being
I'm not trying to
serious.
take people out here.
Yeah, no, you
It's what Romi was just saying. It's kind of the opposite. Like, I try to bring everyone together.
No, let's be real.
Well,
like,
she
you can
makes you lethal.
Yeah, you're lethal out there, because you can throw a stone and hit like a million financial advisors. There's a lot of them running around town.
Well, yeah, it's super easy just to say, hey, send me your statement. Any advisor can find flaws in what another advisor is doing. It doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong, but it's just easy to point out to someone, hey, did you see this happen? Right. And all of a sudden, if they don't know any better, their bells and whistles are going off. Instead of saying, hey, let's work with your advisor if possible, right? Or if they still at the end feel that they're not doing a good job, right, then we can kind of transition to working in that capacity. But a lot of it all starts with planning.
But I think it's more than that.
Integrity that you operate with is...
Yeah, but it's even a step further than that. And I'll tell you why. Not a lot of financial advisors are also certified CPAs, JDs, like with a law degree. So it's not that you have an understanding of those worlds from 13 years experience working with different attorneys, different accountants. You have it from a fundamentals, from an education background. Like, you are certified in all these areas. So when you go and look at a statement, or when you go and sit and talk strategy or planning, it's coming from a completely different perspective. And I notice a huge difference when you get on those calls. Like, when you got on the call with my attorney, you're speaking to him as a peer. It's not like you're speaking to him as a strategic partner that's coming from a different category. And there wasn't a lot of like, having to, educate each other on different things. You came at it like, I'm on your team. Like, I get what you're trying to do and what you need to think about, and here's where I'm approaching it from. So you were able to have such a more meaningful conversation with our attorney because you were coming at it from, a peer-to-peer perspective.
And it's still important, though, to point out that the peer-to-peer is there, but if someone is still in that practicing day to day, and that it's important to still recognize that they still are the expert, right? Because you can almost say like if we're giving a medical analogy, like I'm like a general practitioner, right? Like I know the tax laws, I know legal stuff, right? But even in there's specific nuances that someone may be keeping up to more to date with, and that's where the collaboration really comes. It's like
that's the word. It's a very collaborative conversation. It's not like two people stating their case. It's a very, very collaborative, strategic. Everybody's coming up with ideas. You maybe are thinking of things that they're like, oh yeah, that you're right. And then they're thinking of things, and just the way the conversation flowed was a very different experience than I've ever had in the past. So I think that really is what makes you so effective for a business owner in particular, and why you have such, your clientele looks the way it does. You're able to offer, some almost like CFO guidance, and then apply that to the personal side. Yeah.
And, within Connect Financial, we do really have it, we call it business consulting, but it's really what it is. The business owner can say, I want to meet with you every month or every quarter or whatever. We dedicate time to talk about different things. I've done things from, one of the business owners said, hey, can you interview my controller? Right? Now, I'm clearly not like an HR person, but he wanted me to feel comfortable with me kind of understanding, like, okay, does this person like pass the mustard check? Is there any red flags?
Right.
Like, stuff like that.
And I think that's powerful. Like, to be able to have someone like you to look over what's happening in the business from a money matters perspective, and be able to interpret that from a personal financial planning and say, okay, so this is what we're forecasting, or this is what happened. Now, what does that mean for everything else?
That's like another important thing to note, is that as people, rightfully so, are investing money into their businesses, because you're not going to get a better rate of return than any asset in your business, and any financial advisor that tells you otherwise is, full of what.
It's okay, we curse on this episode.
Okay, full of shit. But at the same time, what if the business goes wrong or south? And so trying to get them to realize, like, okay, you still have to start building stuff outside of the business for yourself also simultaneously, and not have everything tied in. It's really natural for everyone to run everything through the business. Right? And rightfully so. There's a lot of strategic ways to take advantage of tax strategies and things like that. But you also have to be cognizant of the fact that if that business isn't there 5 years from now, you could be left really with, in a bad position.
I think that's true. I think if there was one thing I wanted to leave, the audience with, is to understand whatever you think the cards are you have to play, or whatever tools you think are in your toolbox, there is infinitely more. You need a person like Chad to help you identify all of them. I've already learned about things that I had no idea existed, just from a handful of conversations working with Chad. So it's really important, if you decide to take that leap, or if you've just taken that leap, you need an advisor. You need someone like this in your corner helping to guide you. You need someone to ask the dumb questions. You need someone to get naked in front of that can tell you, okay, here's how we put the clothes back on. This is the best for you based on where you want to go.
Yeah, a perfect example. I had a call with someone yesterday, an attorney client of mine who lives in a different state. And she's like, I want to sell my law practice, right? And was trying to figure out, okay, can it be bought? How can I do it? And the legal industry is unique in that, anyone that buys it actually has to be an attorney, and there's lots of nuances. But we started with, okay, do you even know what your business is worth, right? Because if what the number it's worth is not what she's expecting on an exit, she's either going to want to, keep going, or not even go down that path at all if it's not fulfilling enough for her. Right. And so when we went through the exercise, and there was about a $4 million gap between what it was worth and approximately worth, I'm not a business valuation expert, but we have tools that we can utilize to show someone approximately what their value is. It was a sizable enough gap where she's like, I've worked too hard. I'm not selling for that. I'll keep working. What do we need to do now to drive the value from where it is to where I want it to be? And you can literally, no matter what stage of a business someone's in, from startup all the way to exit, or, as you work your way from like startup phase to growth phase to mature phase to transfer phase. Not to get too technical, but those are the four kind of like overall categories to think of if you're starting a business, is where are you in that cycle? Because there's things that you need to check off along the way in each of those areas to make sure that you are getting the maximum value that you can.
I think that's one of the things I learned in working with you, especially, and having the privilege to sit in some of these meetings with you, was to understand that from the very start of starting your business, you should be thinking about your exit. Like there's like that is literally, and it's hard for people to think, right? We're so focused on let's just get this started and up and running. But you need to have some kind of roadmap. Like where does this end? Like what's my exit strategy going to be because this is happening and what's it going to look like?
And tying the behavioral stuff back in too, it's what are you going to do after, right? So many business owners I've worked with have sold their business and they end up back working a year or two later because they weren't prepared mentally and psychologically for what not having something to do every day does. And for a lot of people, they need that interaction and that day-to-day of something. So a lot of the stuff we do is also on the the emotional side of things. Is your family ready for this? Like, even as someone's entering a business, is your family ready, either emotionally or financially to, and that was one of the things we talked about discussing was, are they ready to even start up a business, right? Because there's things you have to be ready to do.
Ain't it the truth?
It's all hands on deck. It affects every single person around you.
It's true. And that's really what we want to kind of provide for people on the episode today is to really start right there and start with, if you are thinking about leaving your firm, leaving, corporate and starting.
So many people. Whether they do it or not, I'd say it's
It's on everybody's mind right now. In fact, I think I read recently, it's like one of the top 10 Google searched terms, right? Like people are really thinking about.
The world we're living in doesn't make it any easier, right? They see YouTube people that have no education, no background, anything, just making boatloads of money for posting.
Are they
things.
though?
Depending on the following.
I think, even when I think about my mindset around jumping ship and starting my own business was not just having always that entrepreneurial drive in me, but, just a lot of what it afforded me to do for my son, for our lifestyle. Like there was a lot of pros, there was a lot of cons, there was a lot of sacrifices, things we had to consider.
There's a lot of sacrifice. Everyone I went to law school with for the first 3 or 4 years was like, why are you foregoing what could be a really nice salary with your background for, at the time, was a lot less. Right. Things have definitely reversed.
Right.
And now I have the free time, like you're talking about, and that's why I was willing to do it. But yeah, it's being ready to start.
So I love that, and I love kind of when you shared that story about your client who wanted to sell. There was a lot of assumptions based on that decision.
And hard conversations to have. Like, I'm going to say what's up.
Right. Well, it was a good thing you really scaled it back and said, well, let's see what it's worth first, because there was a lot of assumptions she was making. And I think when people start business, that's the case as well. We have a lot of assumptions about what we think things are going to look like, how we think things are going to pan out, what we think things are worth, what we think we can make. So for someone who's thinking about leaving big law, and starting their own firm or starting their own CPA practice or consulting practice, what are some of the things you would advise them to start thinking about financially to prepare? Because this is a biggie that comes up in a lot of our member conversations. Sure. It comes up in a lot of the content, is that early stage struggle of trying to pay the bills, grow the business, replace your income, minimize or mitigate debt. So what are some of the things you would have them start thinking about?
So one is, what does your savings look like, right? Because you need to recognize most businesses are not profitable in the beginning, right? Now you may get that one big off client that may be very, very fruitful, but that's not the reality of most people's situations. Some people it takes 2-3 years to turn a profit on a business, right? And that's important to be cognizant of. So talking about emergency savings, right? Do you have enough? And everyone has a different level of what they are comfortable with, right? But that's one of the first things is, okay, if you don't earn money for 6 months, where's the money coming from, right? Because then on your personal side, you're going to end up in debt, and it's a downward spiral. You're not going to get off the hamster wheel, right? Now, it could come from the form of savings. It could be from the form of maybe a spouse earns enough to sustain the family until the profit comes, and that's why having joint conversations with your significant other is really, if you have one, is really important, because they need to understand not just the financial implications of what you're going to go through, but also the emotional ups and downs. I think everyone's seen that chart where it's like they show success and they don't show the iceberg, and they don't show what's underneath the iceberg of all of that stuff. And in the first 3-4 years, I couldn't tell you the amount of times I was literally like, it's my final straw, and then you have that one good day, right? I kind of give a golf analogy. You could hate golf, suck at golf. You hit one good shot on that course, you're going to be back the next time.
It's true. It's
right?
true.
And that's true when you're kind of in the startup phase. So making sure you have enough liquidity somehow, or a strategy in terms of how are you going to raise money. If you're going to raise money, the SBA obviously has loans you can do. There's business lines of credit. If you have enough equity in your house, which I'd bet most people who own that bought prior to this crazy run has enough equity that they could potentially tap into, or have an open line, right? So that's another key thing, is make sure you have access to money. It doesn't mean you need to be utilizing it, but have access to it. Right? So those are a lot of the things to consider. And then what to do with, everything that used to be you get when you're an employee, right? You lose all that when you go on your own. So what's your plan? What's your plan, going forward, and also what to do with the old stuff, right? Because it's both.
Right. I love that. And and I think, it all starts with kind of getting really clear, like knowing what your expenses are, knowing what your savings is, knowing what your cash flow looks like. And I think, to your point, giving yourself the runway to build. And,
Now, there are substantial advantages too, right? Most people think, oh my God, I have to go get my own benefits now. I'm not getting benefits through my company. And it's going to cost you money, right? But you can save so much significantly more if you structure your business correctly from a tax standpoint, that you can way offset the cost of that money and end up probably with,
net more.
You'll have more in your money. You'll pay less. It may look like you earned less, but you'll end up with more cash because of how you plan from a tax standpoint.
And I think so for anyone listening, it starts with opening up your financial junk drawer, organizing it. You need to know what the expenses are, what the cash flow looks like, what your projections are, your startup costs. Do you need to build a website? What are those initial big expenses you're going to need to get up and running?
Ongoing.
And then ongoing operating costs until you have clients or customers that are able to cover the costs of those operating budgets. But I just want to let you guys all know we're so happy to have Chad on our team at the Daily Drip. He handles all of our personal and business financial planning, and it has been a game changer for us. And not only are we working with him, but now Connect Financial is a community partner of the Daily Drip, and we are so excited to bring some of the tools, the expertise, and everything, all the resources that this sniper has up his sleeve to all of you, so that you can start thinking and planning on the right foot and on the right track. So look out for more Connect Financial programming, episodes, articles. We're going to have events and a lot of workshops.
To be the community partner. I know, I've been here since the beginning, and it was like, okay, it's going to be the right time where it's going to make sense to connect, no pun intended. But that's really what it's about, though, anyway. The brand is really connecting financial, legal, and tax. It's connecting personal and business planning. It's connecting all your advisors together, to make sure that everyone's working on one unified vision for you.
I love that. And so thank you for being here. Thanks for supporting us from day one. We're happy you're here because we know we have a lot of people in our audience and in our community that are up at night, late at night, thinking about these things. And we don't want them to be. We want them to know who to call, who to ask the questions to, and get access.
I also, besides being the partner, I love utilizing, I've worked with a lot of members and community partners and thought leaders. Once people have a chance to check out the website, that's done from Joe, one of yours, Joe and Law Firm Sites. So it's
shout out to Joe at Law Firm Sites. She helped get Connect up and running with their site. No, but thanks. So we've got more to come from Chad, more to come from the team at Connect, a lot more resources and support for you guys as you start your entrepreneurial journey, as you grow this business asset, and as you get on your way to achieve your goals. So we will be back again with more on Her Pursuit. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Her Pursuit.
You can listen to new episodes every other Wednesday on Spotify or watch us on YouTube. Stay in the loop on all our virtual and in-person events, read our latest articles, and catch new episodes by subscribing to our free weekly newsletter.
Check out the episode notes for more details, and we'll see you here on our next episode of Her Pursuit.